Jenny here. So glad you're back. I wanted to share tonight my story of how I went from being misdiagnosed to properly diagnosed. I went misdiagnosed for 16 years. Actually, we'll try to make this as quick as I can, not bore you with unnecessary details, but I know that some, I don't want to leave out anything important that might resonate with somebody, so just bear with me. I will try my hardest, and I just appreciate you being here. So it all really started in 2003. I was hit head-on by somebody who ran a red light. Prior to that, I really didn't have any pain issues or, I had migraines. I had the occasional migraine that had been diagnosed by a neurologist, but it wasn't something that was debilitating. So I did go to the hospital after this. They told me I had a mild case of whiplash, but that everything would be okay. I'd be sore for a couple of days, no big deal. I continued, I had been to the chiropractor before for headaches, and so I just continued seeing the chiropractor. And then within a year, I'd say, then about a year from the accident, these occasional migraines had turned to chronic migraines. So I'm seeing another neurologist by this point that was closer to home, and he's got me on prophylactics to try to prevent them, and then, an abortive to relieve them when they come on. And that was about it. But I did start to feel like just tired and sort of run down, and I did have some blood work. This was a couple of years later. And at the time, I was working full-time. I was engaged in nursing school. So I was run down, obviously. But I did have some unusual autoimmune markers and some unusual numbers with my kidneys. So we had further testing. It wasn't anything to be alarmed about, just to keep an eye on. So fast forward to 2008, I had just given birth to my daughter. And these chronic migraines that really typically were fewer than 15 a month, I would say, because they were managed well. They started really becoming more frequent to every other day. And I started feeling beyond exhaustion, because I had already had a toddler at the time as well. So beyond the motherhood exhaustion and not being able to sleep, it was a just bone deep, you cannot lift your head out of bed in the morning exhaustion, dropping things. I'm having trouble thinking, having trouble speaking, getting my words out, and memory, and gosh, a lot. I felt awful. But again, I had a colicky newborn and a toddler, and my husband was in Iraq, so I sort of expected to feel cruddy. I did, of course, go to my nurse practitioner, and she did some lab work and found out that I was in pre-menopause. And I was only 28 at the time. So that's unusual. I was also in adrenal fatigue. So I was started on bioidentical hormones and got those balanced. She gave me something to help me sleep, but still it did not alleviate the pains that I was having. I was having chest pains, like burning pain in my chest. A real deep, throbby, achy pain in my upper mid back that I never had. And I thought, it felt to me like kidney stones, because I was also having urinary type symptoms. But there was nothing, I didn't have kidney stones. So multiple trips to the doctor were unfruitful. Eventually I end up, being referred to a rheumatologist. And this rheumatologist diagnosed me with fibromyalgia. He also diagnosed me with a few other things while I was there: TMJ, SI joint disorder, carpal tunnel in both my wrists. But I asked at that point, I said, is it possible that it could be Ehlers Danlos? So I remember learning about Ehlers Danlos syndrome in nursing school, and he kind of scoffed at the idea and was like, no, that's not, you just have, bendy, stretchy joint, wrists and ankles. And I do. I have, So I kind of let that go. I mean, his reaction, I was like, the question was so crazy, so I just let it go. But I did ask about the possibility of breast implants, like if it could be, causing fibrolax symptoms, because I had them for 10 years at that time. And he also said no. He's like, they're not ruptured, because I had imaging. He's like, they're not ruptured, then how could they be making you sick? And besides, they wouldn't cause fibromyalgia symptoms. So anyway, I did go get a second and third opinion, 2 other rheumatologists who also agreed with him. And it never went away. Like, I always had this nagging sort of like, there's something, I feel like it's something other than, in addition to the fibro, in addition to the migraines, like something else causing it is what I mean. So by this point, I had seizure studies done. Because I was having body jerks, that went beyond like restless leg syndrome. So I'd had an EEG. I'd been completely worked up and not a lot of answers. By 2010, the chronic migraines that were every other day turned into daily. I tried. The thought did come up. Sorry about that glare. The thought did come up that maybe there were rebound headaches, because I had been taking triptans. So I went off of them, went off of everything, gave it enough time to get out of my system to see if that could be the case. That was not the case. Really, I didn't notice a lot of a difference other than I was getting zero relief off of them, but the frequency didn't change at all. And so I was now on my 3rd neurologist, because they would retire or they would move. It wasn't that I was like, hopping or skipping around, but it was good to have new, someone with fresh ideas. He would try blocks, in different medication combinations, but that wasn't very fruitful. He told me about a study going on in a different state, suggested I try it because it was for a new therapy, like the newest and latest therapy for migraines. I went out of state, was worked up. The neurologist that was doing the study told me I wasn't a good candidate because of my other health issues, to go home, and get that worked out and everything. And anyway, so that was disappointing. But around the same time was when Botox started to become, an option for people with chronic migraines. So it wasn't offered in my state, but we found a neurologist in a close by state who did it. And the first time, and with the combo meds that he put me on, it helped. But by the time it was time to have another round, it wasn't as helpful. And so I had also been seeing a doctor for my SI joint disorder, for my lower back pain, for an orthopedic doctor, and he was a pain management doctor as well, so he did injections and blocks. And he diagnosed me with occipital neuralgia in addition to the daily migraines. Like a combination of the two. The blocks didn't help though. Nothing was helping. I had to quit work because I was just not able to function in the amount of severe pain that I was in. And when you have a migraine, those of you that get migraines, you can't function. Not when it's not being relieved. It's excruciating, and all the light sensitivity and sound, sensitivity. So I had to leave my job, and I was like desperate, trying everything. I did everything, acupuncture, elimination diets, like more elimination diets, and I won't bore you with everything I've done. But I ended up at a naturopathic doctor who ran a lot of tests on me and discovered that there was mercury in my system, and that I had a mild form of what he could conclude as POTS. And so he put me on a round of different supplements, and suggested an elimination diet, because I also had tested for all of these sensitivities. Like, I mean, we're talking so many different foods and like chemicals, multiple chemical sensitivity, things like that. So I tried everything that he suggested, and I just didn't, these diets and these supplements, I didn't get anywhere with it, and nothing changed. So I couldn't justify spending the amount of money that it cost and traveling to see him. So I stopped doing that. About this time, my endometriosis was getting worse, my ovarian cysts, that kind of stuff was getting worse. I'm sorry, I got hair in my mouth. And my OBG thought, really, it's not going to get better. I've tried, he'd done everything he could do as far as those issues were concerned. And he suggested an interstitial cystitis. I always forget about that. So let's try a hysterectomy. So that's what we did, and in 2012, and it did help those issues besides the interstitial cystitis. Then right as I'm healing up from that surgery, I get T-boned by a large truck. A man was texting, sustained severe whiplash this time, as opposed to the mild whiplash the first time. Injured both arms, injured my lower back, my wrist, the carpal tunnel in my wrist, everything was made worse. So I ended up like so much worse than I already was. And where I was able to sort of do light workouts before and go to church and see, have a little bit of a social life and date nights and all, a normal life, now was just debilitating pain. So it was it was 2013 that I had heard about something called the Omega procedure, and it was a neurostimulator for migraines instead of just for back pain. Like neurostimulators had been used for to that point. So I did all the testing. I qualified for it since all else had failed. Had that implanted. For the first 6 months, it was great. It helped a lot. It did not take away all the head pain, but it gave me enough relief that I felt normal-ish again, at least where my head and neck were concerned. Not the rest of my body, but that is the most disabling pain that I have, is the head and neck. So I'm like, that's, hey, this is a miracle. And then about 6 months, it stopped working. And we tried everything, reprogramming, all of it. We found out, though, that the leads had migrated. So by the next year, I had to have a complete revision. And it just never worked again the way that it did in the very beginning. And I don't know. I don't know if your nerves get used to it. I've heard that they can, and that, they can get used to it, and it just isn't helpful anymore. But anyway, I continued. I'm back at work by this point, and when it stopped working, it really, it's like everything went downhill. Worse and worse. It got worse and worse. I started having symptoms that I really hadn't had before, like fainting, severe dizziness, ear ringing, or at least that I hadn't noticed before. My ears were ringing, severe nausea, just sort of unrelenting, like it was always there, always nagging, vomiting, not all the time, but it would randomly, of course, happen with migraines, but not even associated with the migraine sometimes. So it was just getting so bad that by the time 2015 rolled around, I had to quit for the safety of, there were 2 times on the highway that I fainted very briefly, and only by the grace of God I did not hurt myself or someone else. But nonetheless, it did happen while I was driving, and that's very dangerous, obviously. Find out that is related to the POTS now. And so that's also why my heart rate was staying elevated all the time. It would stay like 115, 120. The lowest it would get would be 100, and that would be really good for me. So I had to quit, and I was devastated, and I decided that I was going to spend all of my time researching, because I had to, lost the career that I love, and I wanted to find out what was at the root of this. It still was nagging at me that there was something else going on. and we didn't have all the answers. So I spent all my free time, the kids are at school, every time, spare minute that I had researching, and I came across something called Craniocervical instability. Well, Ehlers Danlos, of course, because I had already expected or suspected that. And then something called Craniocervical instability, which sounded exactly, it was word for word, same symptoms. And I just knew it. I knew I had to find someone to listen to me to rule out this Ehlers Danlos. And so I did find a really great doctor a friend told me about, and he mentioned it before I even did getting tested for it. I was seeing him for IBS. He said, you have to get worked up for this. I was referred to a geneticist, and by 2017, I was worked up by a geneticist and confirmed that in fact I did have Ehlers Danlos, and that it was the hypermobility type. So that was the reason, obviously, behind my rear wrists and my ankles rolling and my jaw dislocating all the time and my SI joint, all of that. It was so validating, and this man was like an angel. Just incredible man. His name is Dr. Wilson. He's in Dallas. So he suggested that, based upon my history, that I really needed to have ruled out craniocervical instability, Chiari malformation, and spontaneous spinal fluid leak. So, and like I said, I had already sort of started seeing those things in my research, and so I just was so excited, like the fact that maybe there would be something at the root that could be fixed or worked on that might improve my symptoms. Because at this point, I had been told in 2015, sorry to back up, by a neurologist, was he the 5th or the 6th one that I had seen? I believe he was the 6th. He told me there was nothing else that could be done. That really, truly, I had exhausted every other option for migraines. And so, really, I had tried everything and failed and lost my career, and I'm in, debilitating pain, not able to, I'm missing out on my kids' labs, my family functions, and you name it. I had lost so much by this point. So hearing those things from the geneticist was just life-changing for me. It was so encouraging. By April of 2017, I was seeing Dr. Carroll at Stanford to rule out spinal fluid leak. He could never pinpoint a location, but he felt very strongly that I had a leak. They're very hard to find. The imaging hasn't quite caught up in that field. But he felt so strongly that I had one that he continued on with the fibrin glue patching. And the thing is, with Ehlers Danlos patients, they don't stay because of our connective tissue. So he felt that he had narrowed down the location and referred me to be, I'm sorry, I still get brain fog. To be referred to be evaluated, for surgical repair in LA by a neurosurgeon there that will repair spinal fluid leaks. That surgeon did not agree. Since he could not see it on imaging, he wouldn't do it. He said he didn't think that I had a leak. And I was crushed, because I'm thinking, we finally found an answer. What now? If he doesn't agree, then what do I do? These fibrin glue patches aren't helping. But I had been waiting to get in with a neurosurgeon on the East Coast for a year, and my appointment with him was upcoming in that 2018, January 2018. He, through digital motion x-ray and rotational CT scan, did confirm a diagnosis of Atlantoaxial instability and recommended a C1, C2 fusion. So that was just, wow. All this searching finally paid off, and I'm going to get my life back. I was just so hopeful, but I didn't have a peace, as surgery neared, that that because you can't, a fusion is hard to undo once it's there. So I really felt like I needed to make sure that we ruled out completely the leak. So I went back to Stanford, more patching, more consulting with Dr. Carroll. We still couldn't locate like 100% the location. It was still just the suspicion that he thought he knew where it was at. This wasn't really getting much more clear. Move forward a little bit. I wake up one morning, it was the fall of 2018, in mind-numbing, pain I didn't know. I mean, I thought I knew pain. I've had natural childbirth. I've been suffering in severe pain, constantly for the past close to a decade, 8 years, whatever, 9 years at this point. And so this pain was incomparable because I could get no relief. Like, it didn't matter if I was flat, didn't matter if I was upright, ice, pain meds, nothing. I was in tears. I was there was literally nothing I could do. I'd reached out to all of my doctors. My neurologist, she's a new one, so she's my 7th neurologist. She thought, she was right. She's like, I think you have nerve damage. I think you've got nerve entrapment, this occipital neuralgia, migraines, instability, maybe even the leak, and it's all just, out of control. It was suggested to me by my neurosurgeon, Dr. Henderson, the collar, a different kind of collar, because the collar I had tried before didn't help as much. In fact, it made my TMJ worse. In a support group, somebody mentioned this kind of collar. So I tried this kind of collar, 9-day difference. I've been in it ever since under the recommendation of my doctor. I went back to see Dr. Henderson's partner in December of 2018 and had to get new imaging done. So new digital motion x-ray and CT scan, the rotational, flexion extension. And he confirmed that actually that the instability had gotten worse. And now, as I had not only the C1, C2 instability, but also lower levels, and that I would need a fusion from skull to C7. But he felt like that before we moved forward with that it would benefit me to try one last thing, since I had literally tried everything. We're talking physical therapy. I mean, how many times I lost count how many times I've done physical therapy, everything. The only thing I hadn't tried was something called prolotherapy. And he said that it saved, hundreds of people from the OR a year. So I'm like, and especially my husband really wanted me to try that. So that's sort of where we're at. He told me to stay in this until either the prolotherapy works or the fusion, but that's where we're at now. And while I have to stay in this, it doesn't take away all of my symptoms, but it alleviates them enough to where I can function. I'm not in that mind-numbing pain, that excruciating, beyond excruciating. The pain to me, like the way I describe it, was worse than childbirth, and you can't live like that 24/7. So that is how I was properly diagnosed, from it being daily migraines to it being a combination of things causing the migraines: the instability, the occipital neuralgia, the nerve damage, causing the migraines. So listen to your gut. I don't know. That is like the big message that I take away from all this. My intuition, was trying to tell me, even with the migraines, I knew there was something else causing it. And I had tried every single protocol, supplement, crazy thing under the sun, and it wasn't working because it wasn't what was really wrong. Also with the fibromyalgia, I forgot about this. This is uncomfortable to talk about, but once I had the breast implants removed, my fibromyalgia symptoms got a lot better. And I'm only sharing that, speaking from my experience and other women that I've talked to that were also in early menopause and also had interstitial cystitis symptoms, all these random things that really weren't directly associated with fibro. After I got the implants removed in 2016, and they were better. The interstitial cystitis symptoms went completely away within a year. The fibro symptoms, 90% better. And now I sort of wonder if I ever had fibro, if it was a combination of the Ehlers Danlos, because that can cause muscle pain too. I do think that I still have it. I think that it's just drastically better. And then my hormones woke back up. That was another thing. The pre-menopause that I had been in for so long, like it just, my hormones corrected themselves. It sounds crazy, and I almost didn't even want to talk about it because it does sound crazy, but I would feel guilty if I didn't share my experience, because maybe someone else out there is suffering, and maybe you have implants. I don't know, but that's my story as of right now. I have received 1 round of injections. It was bone marrow aspiration and PRP injections, so that's stem cell and PRP into my neck, the ligaments all the way down, and he did a few other areas like my SI joint and my jaws, and my neck in the front. So it takes 3 to 6 months, and it's only been 2 months, but it takes 3 to 6 months to see if it's going to be beneficial enough. So we will see. All I know is that I do feel a little bit better. Like my energy is higher. I'm getting more time out of my collar. I'm supposed to take it off and see how long I can last without having it on. And I'm getting more and more to where, as before the injections, I had no time out of the collar without, the symptoms, not just the pain, but the dizziness, the tinnitus, all of that. So now I'm getting more time out of it, and he said that's good. That it's gonna take time. It's gonna be, especially with the extent of all this. So I wanted to share. I had to share. I know this is long. I need to quit talking, but I had to share. So if there's anything to take away, listen to your gut. Be your own advocate. Research. If you're not getting answers, and if you don't have a doctor that's listening to you, find one. There are doctors that'll listen. There are, and you deserve to be listened to. So, and if you have any questions, like anything, I don't know, if you have any questions about anything I said or anything, please feel free to message me. I will answer any questions you have, or comment below, whatever. Yeah, I just appreciate you listening. I hope that somebody can find encouragement from this. There's hope. There's hope. So thank you for listening, and I hope that you're all doing well, and I really appreciate you being here.